Okay, hi, I'm King Loki, and welcome to our Writer Spotlight series. Today we've got Mike Linehan, one
Yeah.
of our
Hello.
writer. We published him in our winter edition of Death Wish Poetry Magazine. His poem, "The Wendigo and the Billionaire," is a
Mm.
political polemic, something we love very much, featuring a monster. Mike, how you doing? Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, you did. Yes, my day job is as a teacher, so I'm used to people mispronouncing the last name. So
Yeah.
you got it right. Yeah, I'm doing good. Just I'm in New Hampshire, so we got a snowstorm or two on its way. So just buckling down, ready, getting ready.
Yeah, understandably. We had a little bit of snow here, but this is Philadelphia. It doesn't really snow here. Not really.
But yeah, my brother's lives in Philly, so I get it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, considering what happened a few nights ago.
Yeah,
I mean, snow's the least of our problems here. But yeah, you're actually the second teacher I've interviewed here, and I think that's super cool. What grade do you
nice.
teach?
Well, I teach in high school, so I've got sophomore English, and then I've got a couple electives. Last year I had creative writing as one. I have folklore this year, and then I was teaching for the second year in a row a class dedicated to detective fiction, gothic
Ooh,
literature, and horror stories. So
wow,
fits the
that's
vibe.
exciting. That's fantastic.
I love it.
I wish my high school offered all that. Personally, I've never been part of the slam poetry scene. Is that a
Mhm.
big thing in Manchester, New Hampshire?
It's and I love how you opened up focusing on New Hampshire, which I assume just most people forget exists as a state most of the time, except for like the fall leaves and all that. So just first off, like slam poetry scene in general is just so much fun. The group I'm a part of, Slam Free or Die, because of course New Hampshire, it's been
Yeah.
around since 2005. Or I would probably say the main source of New Hampshire of poetry in New Hampshire, but we're certainly not the only ones. There's some other groups even within the city that are operating more as like one's a variety show, one's a little bit
Hmm.
more on the like more risque side and whatnot. So it's a pretty popular thing in this area. Being next door to Massachusetts, they've got a bunch of different scenes there, especially in Boston. I think there's at least two or three in that city alone. So yeah, I think it's a big thing in pockets. I just was very lucky to have found it in college myself, and then got into it that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I could see it being big in Boston. I mean, Mr. Poe lived there for a minute
Hmm.
too, so.
Yeah.
I don't think we have much of that going on in Philly. We have a lot of like burlesque and drag shows. That seems to be what's big here. I think I'm just in the wrong city, so I don't know. But what's that like going to, a poetry slam or a spoken word event or, it seems like they diversify a bit to bring in a wider crowd.
Yeah. So I've been a part of a couple different communities as I've moved around within the New England area. I guess I can speak most directly from what we do at Slam Free or Die. Admittedly, I am one of the newer members. I think I joined in fall of 2023, if I remember correctly. But basic routine, we run an open mic at one of the local breweries every Thursday night. That runs for about like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. People take their little smoke break, and then we have the like main event afterwards, which is either we feature a touring poet or we host a poetry slam, which follows the typical slam rules. Each poet has 3 minutes to perform. If it starts going over, they take off points. Judges are pulled from the crowd, so it's not like academics. It's literally just randos with the whiteboards and like a 0 to 10 score.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. It gets intense too and very competitive at times. Um, but yeah, some of those slams we use as qualifiers to put our like annual team together to compete against other groups in the Northeast, mostly New England. But we had in December I was on the team and we went to Albany, um, and we're all over the area. Sometimes slams are for that. Other times, personally, my favorites are when it's just fun and built around a certain theme. Last year we had a tarot themed slam, which people would pull out a card, they'd go head to head, and have like I think it was 4 minutes to write on that particular card's theme or whatever, and they read their poem, and then people would just literally do like a red or blue, like which do you vote for, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I also hosted a Halloween one this past year where each round was a different theme. We had like final girls, cryptids, stuff like that, as like people would write the poems beforehand and compete with those. So yeah, I mean, every group's a little different, but we take pride in ourselves especially, and I think the scene in general of being a safe space.
Yeah.
I'd say honestly, half of our regulars are part of the queer community. We have our annual Pride Prom sort of poetry event every June. It's just fun, and it's a great and supportive group of people. Virtually no matter where you go in the slam
Yeah.
poetry community.
Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, like if something is having to do with the arts in any tangential way, I'm going to expect it to be a safe, safe space.
Mm-hmm.
When the Nazis start doing, slam poetry, I might want to see that just because it'll suck because fascists are not good at making art. They don't
No.
they don't know what they're doing. They don't like modernism. They don't like any of that. So yeah, that's really exciting. So it sounds like a lot of it is like not necessarily off the cuff, but like you'll be given a theme when you're there and you'll write the material. It's no one's like bringing a piece that they've been honing for weeks, right?
So it's actually a bit of the opposite. Those theme slams, those are more off the cuff, but those
Okay.
are not necessarily the norm. In fact, I've had kids that I'll mention in my class, like, "Oh, do slam poetry," and I'm like, "Oh, do it now." I'm like, "No, I can't just think it up on the spot." It tends
Doesn't
to
work like that. Yeah.
yeah, it starts as a poem that you write, and then you rehearse it, the different mannerisms, the performance aspect, and also looking at the time constraints, trying to make it flow better. So typically,
Right.
you actually do spend a decent amount of time working with whatever poems you use
Yeah.
to, yeah, bring up on the open mic there.
Yeah, because I've workshopped stuff that was for slam poetry, but I've never done it myself because like it just seems terrifying. It seems like freestyle rapping. I respect that stuff because it's amazing.
Literally, yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, I get it. It's funny because even now, I've been doing this since 2011, I think. There's still times where I go up there, and especially if it's been like a very like intense and passionate one, I'll get off like the mic, and people are like, "Oh yeah, great job," and I sit down, I'm like, "Cool," and then I'm like, just like shaking. I'm like, "Okay, that's the adrenaline. It's fine. It's fine."
yeah. I'm just in beast mode, no biggish.
Yeah. And it's funny too, like we have it's like you have the like local legends that like once in a while will come to compete and you go like, "Oh shit. I got to compete against them." No. Well, it was fun. It's worth it, I guess.
It's the Schooly D of the slam poetry, thing. He's here. Oh no.
Yeah, but it's a good time overall and very welcoming too.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, so slam free or die, like are you an organizer? Like how can people find out more about that too?
Right. So, actually, just this past year, we got officially nonprofit status, but we are on Facebook, Instagram, and now TikTok. Now that it's back, I guess.
For now, yeah, I don't even
Right.
fuck with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we post regularly on those three sites at Slam Free or Die. We do have a website technically, slamfreeordie. I think that's still technically under construction. So a very basic Google site.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, the social medias will post about our upcoming events, some photos from whatever happened the week before, and stuff like that. Yeah, we've got some cool things coming up in the next couple weeks too. But yeah, it's
Cool.
fun.
Yeah. Links will be below. So.
Yes, yes.
Go visit
Please and thank
Slavery.
you.
Yeah. So your poem, "The Wendigo and the Billionaire," is that like a slam poem? Have you read that live? Was it because it has that cadence to it?
Yes, so funnily enough, in the past, I know every April there's the like 30 for 30 challenge people write during National Poetry Month, try to write a poem each day. I've never really been able to do that, but one of my friends challenged me since they know my interest in all the spooky stuff to do that. But for October, I was like, well, hell, sure, why not? So there was quite a few haikus that were goofy as hell, Dracula themed or Hannibal themed, it whatever.
Yeah.
But that was actually one I wrote during that month. And I could visualize it as a slam poem, but didn't initially start out that way. But yeah, it was a chance to kind of explore these themes that are,
Mm-hmm.
as we've discussed. Very topical, very relevant right now. Unfortunately,
Yeah. Like, it's a very topical, very relevant poem. Is a lot of your work like that, or was it just for this one event, you know?
I would say a lot of my stuff is. I mean, when I first started writing, it was mostly to kind of focus on like emotional topics to process my own feelings and like hoping that like somebody would resonate with it. Like I tend to focus on like a lot of things with like social issues, like social justice, mental health, importance of empathy and stuff like that.
You know, things that matter, things that might matter in a just world, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But the past few years is where I feel like I've experimented more with using personas in my poems, especially from fiction and mythology.
I see, like the Wendigo, right?
Like the Wendigo. Another one I wrote a few years ago when Trump was first elected was literally blatantly called Captain America Speaks to President Trump. So that gave plenty to explore within that framework to do that. But I do like to stay topical and relevant with my writing because partially what inspires me is what I see in the world around me.
Right.
Partially what enrages me is that. So sometimes it's a good channel to use that to address these topics. And my hope too is not only to have someone feel like they connected with it, but also
Right.
perhaps open up dialogue. One can hope.
One can hope. I mean, my goodness, I went through a period during 2016 where I was writing a lot of political poetry, and the stuff was resonating. It was getting published, but I just felt awful. I was like, I need Donald Trump out of my poetry. I need him the fuck out of
Mm-hmm.
here. And like, I definitely feel that. It takes a toll, though. I mean, you know, do you ever feel like you're, how do I put this? Because this is an off the cuff question. Do you ever feel like you're sort of opening your tent to things that you don't want in there?
That is a fair question, and I was going to say that that's the downside of being focused on current events is all that.
Mm.
It's like doom scrolling, but being more actively involved in writing about it.
Seriously, yeah, because like
Yeah.
I write fantasy novels, I write dark fantasy novels with demons and stuff, and like yeah, like the political shit seeps in there, but it's Senator Malakharm. It's not, you know.
Right. So to some extent, yes,
Hmm.
but I like to, I mean, it might be the ADHD brain, but like able to like compartmentalize and different collections too. Like I started
Hmm.
just throwing a document together with just poems that are vaguely about America and or President Trump. So those are like my angry day. I'll pump out a poem, or in a
Yeah.
couple days just to get it out of there, and then go back to whatever else is on my mind or in the moment. I feel like as much as I'm exploring using like personas, especially within the horror genre, as a means of paying tribute to and also addressing social issues, I still try to go back to my or maintain my roots as like someone who's looking to connect and trying to inspire rather than just entertain with poetry.
Yeah, that's the thing about poetry. It's a hard thing to capture, really. But you know, like when I'm writing one of my novels, like that is a story. I'm creating characters and concrete things. Poetry is a lot more ephemeral. It's a lot more spiritual. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like you might expect like a poet to be someone who is a bit more, I don't know, thoughtful. Not all the time. I mean, fucking Ezra Pound was a fascist. I mean, whatever. What are you gonna do? But I'm just saying, like, it is a means of like sharing in a more concrete way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I find that interesting too because the working
Hmm.
as an English teacher, I
Yeah.
get the complaints a lot of times from students being like, "Oh, I don't get it," and like I understand. I've had I have the degree, I have the years of reading and whatnot. I come with the tools to be able to just to break it down a little bit easier. But at the same time, I think the beauty in a lot of poetry is that balance between concreteness and being more abstract. That it doesn't necessarily you don't have to like beat it with a stick and be like, what do you mean, what do you mean, I just want to know the meaning. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
interpret it as you like, and if there's things that are unclear, I mean, sometimes that's part of the mystery of it too. Like
Yeah, and I think that's the mark of good poetry, that you can approach it and come away with different things. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Like that red wheelbarrow, and I forget who wrote it. That could just be a red
William
wheel.
Carlos Williams.
Williams. That's right. That's right. You could take that in many ways. My phone broke a few days ago, and I was like, "Fuck, my red wheelbarrow just broke." You know, like Like, it was disastrous. I think like I don't know, Whitman, when he published Leaves of Grass, people weren't
Hmm.
like, they weren't like checking their English degrees to read that, so yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I like about slam poetry too is that they brought it
Mm,
into like bars and coffee shops to make it more accessible. So like
mm,
a lot of us are, avid readers or teachers or social workers, whatever. So like
yeah.
it kind of comes with the territory, but like you don't necessarily have to have this like hoity-toity like college degree to write these poems. Like it's more about what you're sharing up there with the world.
Yeah, and I like that it opens up the concept of what a poem really is to people because a lot of people think, oh, it's got to rhyme, it's got to have a meter, and so on and so forth. When in reality, it's a bit more complex and open than that, especially these days.
Exactly, exactly. That's yeah, I love that.
Bringing it to spaces where people aren't as engaged and they're maybe drinking and just having a good time. Well, oh, now it's something totally different.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Tell me about Porchlight.
Light. All right. So, this was I was going to say novel, not a novel. It's a poetry collection
Yeah.
I self-published in 2023.
Mm,
Yeah, losing track of the time, but yeah, it was 2023. And really, it's definitely more representative of my typical style of subject matter and all that. It was a culmination of, I'd say, about 10 years worth of poetry. It covered mostly like the loss of friendship, certain relationships, the joy of new friendships. Like it took place like leaving college, starting to live on my own with some friends of mine, meeting my wife. So
right.
it catalogs a lot of the like growth and the healing and also learning to like love myself in the process. As far as the self publication
Yeah.
of it, years ago I'd heard about this site called lulu.com, and I know there's also like Amazon publishing, things like that. I found it, it's pretty user friendly overall. My friend designed the cover and that's wicked cool. I love that.
Mm,
And it does cost a little bit to get like especially the physical copies. You can set up a store on there and people can order it and whatever.
right. Right.
But like overall the experience is pretty simple and positive. And just in the slam poetry community, there's a lot of people who like pump out a chapbook, like just print it out at Staples and like Xerox it and kind of staple it themselves. And they tend to be a lot smaller, which is fine.
That's
But
what a chapbook is.
yeah, yeah. And I had, but like at the same time, I was like, well, I know it's a long shot, but there's the hope that like, oh, if this is online somewhere, that people will be able to access it at their own
Yeah.
leisure rather than
Right.
having to
Right.
wait for me to show up with like my bag full of like of my copies to be like, oh, here it is for $5, whatever.
Like the wizard in the Black Sabbath song.
Yes,
Have you? I've never actually. I never made a chapbook, but here's the thing. Have you ever read the Lost Years of Merlin series?
I have not, though. That does sound like it's up my alley.
Fantastic book. Have you read Lloyd Alexander's Pride and Chronicles?
I feel like I've heard of it.
Black
I'm getting
Cauldron.
further and further away. What was it? Black Cauldron? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So Lost Years of Merlin was written based on the same Mabijinyan Irish tales, whatever. But
Ooh.
I only bring it up because it's exquisite, beautiful, and poetic. It's what today they would call young adult fiction, even though it's a lot older than that. It's really good stuff. But basically, there's a part in Merlin's training where he has to make a tiny harp called a psaltery.
Okay.
He makes it, and then it explodes in fire, and he's devastated. And they're like, "You did it! Good job, Merlin." I always saw the construction of a chapbook, even though I never made one, as a similar kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, as a poet, you're like, oh, I'm going to put together this book of like poems that are connected, and it's going to be a pure expression all on its own. And I think it's cool. I've thought about doing it with Death Wish, like doing like a chapbook series, but we'll see how the
Ooh.
physical edition goes first.
Yeah, no, that I would love that. That's fun. Yeah, there's so many different ways now, for better or for worse, to do that sort of thing. You just gotta be careful of the obviously scammy ones.
Well, yeah, that's my big thing. I mean, like the reason why the physical edition's taken me so long to do is because like I had people pushing me, "Oh, let's do a book, and it's like what you do is you take everyone's poetry, you put it in an Amazon book, and then you have them all buy it. Like I don't like that. It feels dirty to me.
Yeah.
But if I did like a physical magazine, everyone who got in, it would be financially viable for me to get everyone a copy, and then yeah, we could sell them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Now it's ethical. Personally, this is my book of poetry I self-published years ago, Dream of the Ash. It's about my
Ooh.
relationship with Odin. It's really, it's a big deal. Yeah, I haven't written another book. Like I write a lot of poetry obviously, but like as far as publishing another book, it's mostly my Demonland stuff. But do you have a copy of Porchlight?
Of course, I don't have it near me because that would have been too appropriate. But
That's okay. So give me the website and I will flash it up here. Where can people buy Porchlight? Where can I buy a copy?
so you can go on lulu.com. It's LULU.
Hmm.
And I believe last I checked, you could even. I'm gonna double check myself.
Okay.
It's either you can either find it on Barnes and Noble or Amazon too, because that's how distribution works, I guess. Let's see.
Yeah, that's how Drafted Digital does it. They'll put it everywhere for you. I upload to Amazon on my own.
Hmm.
Self publishing is a thing. You got to get your head around it. You got to do a lot of work yourself, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I assume you're like me and you do your own editing and formatting, right?
Yes, yep. I did have a friend of mine. Yep, it's on Amazon for $15. But it's like 130 pages, so it's a chunky poetry book. But yeah, I had a friend of mine who was also in another poetry community. I had looked it over, and he was also a college professor too. So having another critical eye is nice, but yeah, for the most part, it's either doing it myself or like reaching out to your little close knit group of friends and be like, "Hey, so you guys are good at proofreading and giving me your thoughts. I know you can be honest. I appreciate that because I'm terrible when it comes to editing my own work on my own. It takes like somebody else giving their feedback. I was like, okay, fine. I guess I should take a look at it. It's still the romantic idea of like, oh, I wrote the poem and now it's done. It's done. It's
Yeah.
publish
Yeah.
it, seal it up. It's all good. I don't need to touch it again. But
Please
that's not how writing works.
take this off my hands. But yeah, if you want people to read your stuff, you got to chase them. You got to be aggressive. It's dreadful. Yeah, so with that in mind, obviously I'm a proponent of self-publishing, but I'm a very like let's do things kind of person. What's your perspective on self-publishing, versus like looking for an agent and waiting for a callback, or you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, so I haven't worked with an agent myself. I've
mhm.
like every once or twice a year, like Button Poetry or like some other big publisher, decent sized publishers will have like a chapbook contest, and I'm like, oh hell yeah, sure, why not? It is the cost of admission is buying one of their books or something like that. I'm like, sure, why not? I love them all anyway. But there's pros and cons to it all, to be honest. With that approach, there's the advantage of being picked up by a, publisher TM, who's official, who's can do the legwork of promotion and distribution and all that. That's great. At the same time, self-publishing, whatever method you go with, it has the freedom to kind of be your own boss. Like nobody's like breathing down your neck or like forcing it into a specific box to that they want to wrap it up and sell it as. So but of course you're footing the bill, you're doing most of the work with editing, with figuring out whatever program you need to do to bring it to life. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. I mean, I will say that like what turned me around to pursuing self-publishing, besides for Dream of the Ash being deeply personal and me not feeling like compromising
Mm-hmm.
in any way, was like I spent a good amount of time like trying to publish this old horror novel that I just kind of abandoned over the years. And when I decided I wanted to start writing fantasy, like I didn't want to wait around. I didn't want to spend time in the slush pile. I wanted to move on to the next book. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
fuck it. Let's put the money into the cover art and just move, keep moving. And yeah, I mean, I'm happier than I've ever been for frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Like at a certain point, like you got to realize that like finding a real publisher, it's not that you can't do it, but it could take a long time and you've got to get very very lucky. And if you don't have a lot of money,
Right. It's
you know,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I feel you.
The art is its own reward in the end, is my opinion.
Yeah, that's funnily enough. I have a couple friends who do tarot, and like the readings seem to just keep coming up over the past few months of like, oh yeah, explore your, go down and experiment creatively, but don't get too hung up on this thing or that thing. Just kind of go with the flow. I'm like, yeah, I know. But again,
That's what I'm doing anyway.
the ADD brain is like, but committing to one thing, that's the trouble. Just seeing it through to the end. But I
Fair
digress.
enough. Fair enough. And so yeah, tarot is a great tool when you're writing, I will say.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm getting back to your poem. What did I want to ask? Oh yeah, so I appreciate the usage of the Wendigo as, it's a spirit of cannibalism and evil. It's a concept that's frequently misused. I rather like the irony of a Native American
Yeah.
spirit chastising this gruesome creature we call a president, whom was ostensibly elected by the American public. Since the poem was
Yeah.
written, what was your thought process when grabbing the Wendigo and constructing the piece,
So, as I mentioned a little while ago, teaching a class on folklore, cryptids are wicked, fun to explore, and like just folklore in general. That being said, I understand as a white man, approaching these creatures is tricky. The Wendigo or the Skinwalker, they are taboo beings, and I know it's not really my place to just like appropriate them for my own use. That being said, it does seem like those two in particular have kind of come into the like zeitgeist to some extent, and it's been explored a dozen different ways. And the Wendigo in particular, I really like. It's popped up in more popular shows. And when you first look at it, it's the spooky creature kind of associated with the cold and starvation. Depending on the version you look at, it's either a emaciated sort of like humanoid thing, or it's something with like this deer skull, and that's, metal as hell. But, even beyond the surface, you go deeper, and, what you mentioned, the central principle is more about cannibalism and hoarding necessities for oneself. And
Hmm.
that's stuck with me. And technically, I think this was published just before or around the time of the election.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. What could be a better example of cannibals than these oligarchs and like tech barons that are depriving the working class of necessities and luxuries, for that matter. They corrupt whatever religious beliefs they want and weaponize our anxieties and fears to turn on each other. I still
Yeah.
haven't. I'm still unable to decipher if that's like a intentional tactic or if that's just blind, stupid hunger and avarice. At this point, it depends on the day. But yeah, the Wendigo just seemed like a perfect way to explore that. Yeah, I still have the opinion, as is seen in the poem, the Wendigo still in some way pales in comparison to what we're actually experiencing on a national level.
Yeah, like a predator. It'll a T-Rex will kill you and eat you, but then it's gonna walk away and go to sleep. These guys, they don't stop, man. It's exhausting, but like I feel like my rights are being destroyed, like a trillion cuts a second.
Yeah,
Like, like I went out and bought a gun last week because I just don't feel safe. Like, two gay men living in a house across the street from a Trump supporter. Who knows what they see on their TV and triggers them? Like
yeah. And
it's
yeah.
yeah.
For me, it's that weird bubble of being like a cisgender white man, but like so many of my friends are part of the queer community. My students, fall in there. My school is has a lot of like a large immigrant population. It's it's me just kind of looking at it, and the like the festering rage that comes from it, and that's where the some of the poetry comes into play. So
Yeah, no, it's a great outlet. And
yeah,
what do I want to say? Obviously, like, I happen to be Jewish, but like, I have to explain to my little sister all the time that like, you don't have to be afraid right now, but don't get too comfortable. You know what I mean? Like and like a lot of that is like recognizing my own privilege as like a cisgender, you know, nominally white male. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I have to be aware of that when we're talking about stuff on the podcast or whatever it is we're doing, because like, frankly, I do have a lot of privilege. I talk the way I talk. I'm very like this, and if I was a female, people would be like, oh no, she's shrill. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like you using, just my opinion, of course, my privileged opinion, that you using the Wendigo, like, you at least are able to lampshade and be like, I am cisgender white male. You know what I mean? So this is maybe problematic, but this is why I used it.
Right. And I try to approach all of these topics with, some form of respect and admiration, looking to necessarily just I don't know, I did like commercialize it or something. But like
Right.
I'm just genuinely like fascinated with creatures and the folklore of it all, and this one in particular seemed like
Yeah.
an appropriate one to use for this sort of situation.
Especially when the Wendigo's fighting the Hulk. I love him when he's doing that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah, I haven't seen the Wendigo in a while in the Marvel comics. I think they may have shelved him. I don't know.
yeah. I think I was listening to a Wolverine dramatized like podcast last year that featured the Wendigo character. I'm like, what? This
This is
guy?
first. This is yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't even know he existed. Then I looked it up and I'm like, oh shit. Well, okay, whatever.
It's just a horned yeti. It's very bad. Yeah. Thanks, Marvel. Okay, getting back on track though. Yeah, so I wanted to ask. I mean, like, you seem like you're somewhat in my creative headspace to a degree. I mean, how do you deal with creative slumps if they come up? Is writer's block a problem for you?
Yes, so I actually had to organize my thoughts to put this down because as someone with ADHD, this is a challenge. And to be completely honest, I don't know if I have like a solid answer that will like fix things. For me, inspiration kind of comes and goes. Sometimes I've written several poems in the span of a week or two. It just kind of comes out. I'm like, oh, cool, great. And then other times it's like weeks, maybe even months before writing something new. But personally, I think both for myself and maybe somebody who's listening can take some inspiration from this is like keeping two things in mind. One is just to continue to consume media and engage with the world around you. Most of my inspiration comes from the books and movies I've come across, as well as just my own experiences and the stories of those around me. That's what I love is just the storytelling of it all. And then secondly is give yourself some grace. Like you might have a daily writing routine like Stephen King talks about, on writing, and that's great. But if you don't, I feel like that's totally fine too. Don't beat yourself up and give in to like despair or this like imposter syndrome. Go about working on your poem or your story or whatever it might be. And if you can't finish it all in one go, or if you didn't get as much done as you did, like that's fine. Set it aside, put it to bed for the day, return to it when you're ready and refreshed. Because you don't want to get stuck writing just one scene or one stanza and they'd be like, but what happens next? And it's like, sometimes you just have to write the pieces that come first to mind and then fill in the blanks. And yeah, just be kind to yourself. Again, Stephen King has, pumped out God knows how many books and stories at this point, but take it at your own pace. And when it
Yeah.
comes, and having a community that you can fall back on, that you can engage in for inspiration too helps as well.
Yeah, no, to build off that too, something that we've been learning over at Demon Toast is you're not your heroes, and you're not gonna be them. Just because Stephen King wrote 5,000 novels over the past 30 years doesn't mean that that's the ideal, especially considering his output lately.
Yeah.
And also, I do think that sometimes it's better to just finish the draft than get that scene making perfect sense right now. Because you can get
Yes.
real stuck in a quagmire and just give up on a novel because oh, I just can't get past this. It's like, just fucking keep writing. It's fine. It's fine. You'll work it out in the next draft. It's okay. It can take 5 years. It's not the end of the world.
Interestingly enough, when I was taking guitar lessons as a kid, like one thing that they had to drill in me over and over is like, even when you're practicing or you're playing with something, like, oh, you'll trip over a note. You're like, oh, but you want to go back and correct it. Like, nope, just keep going. Just keep
Keep
going.
going.
Yeah, just people might notice or they might not. It doesn't matter. Just keep going.
Yeah, I agree. I do think this quote of Stephen King's comes up constantly, and I think it's real rich for professional writers to be telling people they need to be writing every day, especially working class writers like me and you.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
exactly.
we have 100 things we're doing, and okay, obviously I have Death Wish and Demon Toast and Monster Fangs and all these other creative ventures I'm doing, but I also have a day job that I have to do because that enables all my art. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
at a certain point, listen, Shatter and Splinter, they're not going anywhere. They live right here. They will go on the page eventually. Now, just because you can't write every day, I agree with you. You should be consuming other people's writing. You should be watching cool shows, challenging art. You know what I mean? Garbage in, garbage out at the end of the day, right? Although I do watch a lot of wrestling, so maybe I'm a hypocrite, but.
But don't sell yourself short. That's another opportunity as well. Yeah, no matter what it is, like I know my reading endurance has dropped significantly since high school. Like I,
Yeah.
again, used to read Stephen King 1,000-page novels. Now I look at a book that's like 400 pages. I'm like, this is going to take me a good month or so to get through.
It'll
But
take a minute. Yeah.
yeah, but like the books are good, movies, TV shows, like whatever it is, like still engage in stories. Stories is kind of like the breath in our lungs, in my opinion. Like what really keeps us going.
Yeah, I mean WWE is theater at heart, and I'm watching Logan Paul beat up. Well, I mean they didn't give it to him easily, but I watched him and Rey Mysterio go at it, and I'm like, okay, they're gonna let this new heel defeat the legendary Rey Mysterio, so that someone at WrestleMania can get revenge for Rey Mysterio. Like I
Yeah.
get it, but that's a pretty cool little feud. It's dumb, it's elementary, it's basic, but can you even do that? I don't know. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
So. Yeah, I agree. I think that it's important to engage with lots of art and never sell the thing you're watching short because you can definitely get something out of it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask also, what are you working on now? You mentioned a podcast?
Yes. So I put together a little list.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Most of
Please.
these other things are in the works. So the When to Go and the Billionaire, I wrote that in October. I actually have a solid poetry manuscript that's all horror themed. It explores like social justice, religion, stuff like that too. Speaking as a recovering Catholic, as I like to call it, there's a lot to unpack with that. But trying to shop that
Yes.
around to see if it can get published by somebody else. Again, try to, you know, increase distribution and, the legwork on not just me. We'll see. A couple friends of mine pitched the idea of having a Stranger Things themed like collab chapbook. So we've got some pieces we're throwing together for that. I think we want to align it with the release of season 5 this year.
Oh, is that happening? Okay.
I think so. I love Stranger Things. I'm just kind of waiting to see how it all ends because there's a lot. And then just some miscellaneous like Persona poems. My latest fixation is Arcane. I finished that. I'm rewatching it with my wife, and there's just so much going on. I'm like, oh, this is a good idea. Oh, I could latch onto this and whatnot. Um, but yes, I do have my own little podcast. It is called Mike's Millennial Falcon.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Is it just you?
So it is mainly me,
Yeah.
but almost every week, just about every week, is invite one of my friends on or a couple of friends to talk about whatever the topic is. It's almost always like something nerdy or horror based or whatever. I've also done like interviews with friends. Like in the fall, I interviewed some friends who are practicing witches, so we did like a Q&A with that.
That's awesome.
We just recorded an episode just for shits and giggles doing hear me outs, like hear me out cake. And I'm apparently the most innocent of the bunch, so it's just getting me a little tipsy and just trying to shock me with their choices. And that was a lot of fun. We're just like playing around with whatever topic comes to mind.
That's really cool. Yeah, you're not doing like what we did with Demon Test where we tackle these like big fucking concepts, you know?
Now that we've tackled like series in like increments, like when it came to like Star Wars or
Okay.
stuff like that. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could hang. We'd love to have you as a special guest sometime if you wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, you could promote your stuff too. This month, I have two scheduled. We're talking about Sleep Token at the end of the month, and my two college kids, they want to talk about not my kids. They're my co-hosts. I don't have kids. I'm too young to have kids. I'm only 34. No, but we're talking about like Slenderman and the phenomenon of internet humor and that kind of format. So I don't know.
Now I gotta ask, do you have a favorite Sleep Token song?
Well, that's so hard. It's probably the opening to "Take Me Back to Eden." It's just lovely. It lulls you in. But then there's that one in I can't.
No, that's fair. Yeah, it's. I just love how that's one band that like blew up on TikTok of all things, and just like,
Of all things.
just yeah, no, yeah. I love what is it called? Actually, I think it was from the previous album as Alkaline. That's a solid one. It's just
Oh, it's really good.
yeah, it's
I'm trying to
fun.
remember trying to remember the name of the one on that second album with the heavy fucking bass line. Like it's so brutal. This place will become your tomb. That's what that's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. It's a great band. I think it's Descending. It's that or Telomeres. I don't know. All I know is that this episode's been a long time coming because like my one co-host turned me onto them. And I'm just like, whoa, where's this been my whole life? Because I'm someone who like really liked Marilyn Manson and all that stuff came out about him, and now it's like, yeah, thanks asshole. You're a hypocrite. Great.
Yeah,
thanks.
exactly.
So I've been listening to Ghost, Guar, Sleep Token, Ice Nine Kills. It's hard to fill that void, of such a huge iconoclast,
Yeah. No, I actually, Ice Nine Kills I've seen them a couple times in concert. And technically, I think they originated in the New England area, so.
That's cool.
There's a quote from Spencer Charnas, though, I've latched onto, and I'm trying to remember exactly what he said because, being a horror themed metal band, they get, the people with the pitchforks being like, oh no, this is, trash or whatever, the devil's music, whatever. And he said something along the lines of like, I see this, our music as an outlet or expression for our emotions, not a blueprint for our actions.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people are like, oh, this, school shooter listened to like Marilyn Manson or Ramstein or something like, oh yeah, it's that dark music. It's like, no, this explores dark themes, but sometimes we just need to latch onto that. That's why I like horror and the layers you can dive into that.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, and if you look at the people, I mean, like, the guys from Guar, I mean, despite like how bloody and crazy their music is, like, no sexual assault allegations there. How about that Willie Nelson guy and his innocent music? Let's have a chat about that. Like,
yeah, the double standard.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So, where was I? That's a thing we could do sometime. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Let me see what we're doing. Let me see what else I have here. Okay. Important themes you're rating. We covered that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, hang on. I'm on another screen. All right. So, what keeps you motivated to
No
write?
worries.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I did. Yep, sorry.
Okay.
I was looking at my notes as well. Honestly, just to be a little corny and go back to what I said, it's like just being out and like engaging with the world around me. Like when I first got out of college, I had like a tech writing job. I just sat in a cubicle and like edited like product manuals or whatever it was.
Ugh.
Not a lot of writing came out of that because it was just
no.
The coworkers are fine, but like you're not doing much. Like as a teacher, even if they drive me up the wall, like there's never a dull moment. And just having this community that with Slam for Your Die that I'm able to see on a weekly basis or thereabouts, it's the constant seeing other people, hearing their stories, seeing their work, and thinking, oh, that's a cool idea. I'd like to explore that. Like one poem I wrote about like being like a recovering Catholic and whatnot was inspired by my friend who's an ex-Mormon, and the way that they talked about that made me go, oh shit, I got some shit I need to process, maybe I should go into that. And as far as the motivation, like, yeah, sometimes it lives all up in your head and it's like, oh, but I don't want to put it down on the page. But it's just the world around me, for good or for bad, keeps me wanting to put these things into words, whether it's on the page or on the microphone, to speak it out into the world.
Gotcha. That's a great answer, and I think a lot of people find that very inspiring. Especially people working, soul-crushing jobs.
Mm-hmm.
What did I want to say? Yeah, so you've mentioned being a recovering Catholic a lot. I escaped Judaism when I was like 13, 14. I was in the Orthodox Hasidic community. And, I mean, that's probably about or more repressive than Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, for me, it was as simple as, like, the Bible, the Torah, whatever, it's not historical. It's like that moment in the Thor movie where he's like, I am not your king. And he's like, then I need no longer obey you. And Heimdall swings the sword. It was like that.
Yeah.
It all just went up in smoke instantly, And I'm a fairly strong-willed person, so I've been okay. I mean, like personally, like due to how awful things have gotten, I've started getting involved with like recovering from religion. If you've heard of that.
I have not, but I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's a volunteer hotline for people who are deconstructing and having trouble, maybe afraid of hell, which is as a Jewish person, they didn't drill that into us too hard, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of Catholic people suffering from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. Like, is that something you still grapple with? You know what I mean? Is that still a monster in your head?
It's hard to put into words because sometimes why I do it with poetry because I can dance around it. But
Yeah, yeah. Speak
like
through metaphor. Yeah,
yeah, like so
yeah.
I had some like a tragedy kind of happen in my family. Like as I was going into high school, one of the groups that like really helped me through that was like the youth group at my church, which like in hindsight, it wasn't even necessarily like the religion aspect. It was the community. It's the support.
Yeah.
It's the connections that you made. That's what really made it. There was one point in time though. I call it my gung ho for Jesus phase. I read the Left Behind series.
That's good stuff.
I think I was really concerned about my Wiccan friend and was like, oh, but aren't you concerned? I'm afraid you're going to go to hell. He did not like that. And I basically had another friend tell me, it's like, yeah, you're being a jerk.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah.
So it's like I don't necessarily hold much against the belief itself. It's just like looking back and seeing like how certain beliefs, like the repression that kind of gets worked in there, and you go, oh, this is the way I am. That led me to this quality about myself, or this insecurity, or whatever it might be. So like
Yeah.
there is certainly some bitterness about it, and I do explore that in some of my poems. But I also feel like there's still a part of me that still like holding on to some spiritual aspect, just in a more undefined way. Yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at now with that.
No, fair enough. And it's interesting to hear you say that the community is the hardest part for you. With recovering from religion, that is something they try to patch up because that's a notable thing, you know, that a lot of people are missing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You can call at any time, and there is also like a chat line on the website, but, you know, there's an online community and stuff. There's a lot there, but enough said, I think, you know?
Yeah.
So, getting back on track, you know, just wrapping up, are there any books you'd like to recommend? Any movies, any comic books, you know? If you say The Sandman, I'm going to come get you.
So, I think you discussed on that particular episode the episode with the Muse and the irony of that. I'm like, oh God, I didn't even think of that until that was brought up. But anyway,
Horrible stuff, yeah.
as said before, I consume a lot of media and whatnot. So I'm just gonna try to do this rapid fire. If anything you've heard of or want to comment on, please stop me. So I've read a lot of books. In the past few years, I've been trying, especially to branch out from just the, I'm gonna call it the mayonnaise aisle of writers, just the white dudes. So I've got The Only Good Indians from Stephen Graham Jones,
Great book.
Mexican Gothic from Sylvia Morena Garcia,
Hmm.
The Ballad of Black Tom, Victor LaValle, What Moves the Dead, T. Kingfisher. So that's at least two fungus-related horror books there. I did not do that on purpose. And Breakable Things by Cassandra Clare. That's a short story collection.
Okay.
There's been some shows, especially in the like sci-fi and horror realm. Most of the shows from Mike Flanagan I really love, but especially Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass.
Yeah, Midnight Mass is probably going to get a Monster Fangs eventually. I think it's a masterpiece. I love The Haunting of Hill House. The second one left me a little cold. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Like
I
it
don't
was
care
worth
for the turn
yeah.
of the screw. I think Henry James sucks. I think he's overrated, but whatever.
Yeah, I read that one. I was like, eh.
Fucking terrible.
Yeah, NBC's Hannibal. That was fantastic. Mads Mikkelsen.
Hmm.
Funnily enough, I also have enjoyed some really good like horror podcasts, like Old Gods of Appalachia and the
Yeah.
Silt Verses. Those are really good. And then movies, there's a lot. I'm going to stick to just a handful. I really like the movie version of The Ritual.
It's excellent.
I also really liked Apostle. That was intense.
That's the movie with Dan Stevens, right?
Yes, on
Yeah,
the
great movie.
yes,
Great
and
movie.
Michael Sheen
Great
as
movie.
the cult leader guy. Yeah.
Great movie.
Um, I know people are kind of hot and cold about the Alien series in general, but the most recent one, Alien Romulus, I really liked.
Mhm.
I felt it was a little different. And
They
then,
tried. They tried.
yeah, it's to be fair, after Prometheus and Alien Covenant, there's a lot trying to bring it back to whatever.
Where do you even go after that Narishkite, you know?
I've also got a soft spot for Irish horror comedies,
Okay.
namely Grabbers. Have you heard of that one?
Is that the one about the fairies in the
No,
woods?
no. I think
Okay.
that's the Watchers.
Oh my god. Okay. I don't know.
The Grabbers is about aliens that land on this Irish island that start eating people, but apparently they're allergic to alcohol, so the heroes have to get drunk and just fight them.
That's awesome.
And then I think it came out like 2 years ago. Was Boys from County Hell, and that's an Irish themed one, a vampire one in Ireland.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
My
and
co-host would love you. She's obsessed with vampires. She loves Irish stuff too. So
it was very interesting. Yeah, I got a soft spot for the horror comedies, especially.
cool, cool. Um, I'm assuming have you read Invincible, by the way?
I
There's a
don't.
show on Amazon.
Oh yeah, I was.
That Invincible.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, I know of it, but I have not watched it. I think I've had some friends be like, oh yeah, that would definitely be up your alley, and I just haven't yet.
See, I grew up reading like Ultimate Spider-Man. That was like a big deal for me, you know. And of course, it petered out and did its own thing. But like, Invincible is like if the guardrails weren't there, the brand integrity rails weren't there, you
Yeah,
could just break the status quo every 5 issues. Like, it's a crazy book. The Walking Dead guy wrote it.
interesting. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, yeah. So it's good stuff. The show's really good, but the comic book is oof. I mean, it's 300 issues of just wonder and magic, you know.
wow.
Yeah. So okay, go ahead. What do you want to say?
Hey, I was gonna say, like, I'm intrigued by it, but 300 issues. It's like whenever I tell my kids I've watched like Death Note or Attack on Titan, they're like, "Oh, we got some anime to recommend," and they're like, "You should watch Bleach." I'm like, "Isn't that like 15 seasons?" Like,
Yeah, but that's 15 seasons of garbage. It's just, I don't know. Look, all I know is I took 3 giant compendiums out of the library and I read them straight through, you know? I don't know how many issues. Maybe it was 150. I don't know. Whatever.
that's fair. That's fair.
So, anyway, as we start to wrap up, I mean, do you have any motivational words you want to leave us with? Anything, any words of wisdom you want to give to our viewers, readers, listeners?
Sure. I should be used to this as a teacher. Being a vaguely authoritative figure. I don't know.
We're
Um,
all rodeo clowns.
yeah.
We're all
Just
frauds.
I'm just a part of the circus. I feel like just when it comes to writing in general, I don't have to kind of counteract the Stephen King thing is kind of approach anyone who's been like super successful a little wary with some caution with like these are the 5 things to be successful, blah blah blah. Just do it your own way. I'd say having a community or other writers to work off of, bounce ideas off of, it really helps. And just in general, even though the horrors persist, I want to see less horror in the world actively. Just remember to be empathy, care about other people. I would assume that's common sense, but here we are. Yeah.
Here we are. Here we
Yeah.
are. Here we are. Here we are, Well, that being said, where can people connect with you? Obviously, you have your Instagram. Is there a website or something?
So I do not have an official website. I do have a Facebook, just Mike Linehan. That's my poetry page. Admittedly, as Facebook has gone on, I've been less attentive with that particular one. Um,
Yeah.
you can find me on Instagram. I'll include the link and the breakdown. I've got my personal Instagram as well as one for the podcast. I'm on TikTok at Father Gothic, and
That's
then
awesome.
I'm on Blue Sky now. Like everybody's going now.
Like everyone,
Yeah, Mike on the
but-
mic again. Yeah,
I mean, you don't want to ride on the bus with the, with the Nazis. So here we go.
just yeah. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Fun
so
times.
I'm intrigued to see if anyone follows up on that and is like, oh, I've got new followers. We'll see.
Listen. We've gotten some Nazis who were pissy about our One Nosferatu video, and I'm just like, great, we're doing something right,
Yeah, I don't see that as a bad thing.
No. Keep coming. I love the engagement. Give us views, motherfuckers.
So I am happy to welcome new people. I also apologize for whatever content you find on those socials.
Awesome. Well, there you go, Mike Linehan. Please read Wendigo and the Billionaire and buy his book, or I'm gonna come get you. Make art, write poetry, love your demons, Ave Satanas. So, all right. Did you want to read your poem?
All right. My name is Mike Linehan. This one is called The Wendigo and the Billionaire. They call me the evil that devours, terror of the north, hunger of the waste. They crown me pariah and cast me out into the cold. I wander through the frozen woods, no mercy as I fall upon the lost and consume them meat and bone. Still I am not full. Still I am never satisfied. Still I stalk through the dark, the endlessly empty cavity inside my only companion. But you put my rampage to shame. You make my hunger look like a cheat day. My sins get lost in the shadow of your carnage. They call me cannibal, yet you pick your teeth with the bones of your workers. Damned beast reaping fortune from the corpses of the less fortunate. You upon a throne made from the broken backs beneath you. How can my appetite compare to the bottomless chasm of your avarice? How can my terror compete with your crown, shining with the sweat and blood of the working class? Truly, how can I even be called a monster when men such as you stalk through the corporate offices of America, mouth full of derision, feasting upon the dreams of those who will die in their cubicles without you even batting an eye?
Hey, thanks so much for watching that. Our writers are the lifeblood of what we do here, and you know, I really hope that something, inspired you from what they said, because they've all been very insightful and fascinating in their own way. Listen, we do take submissions. We are quarterly, and, if you want to know when our physical edition is coming out or when our digital edition is open for submissions, please check us out on Instagram, link below, or go to our website. We're usually pretty loud about it. Also, if you want to support us, if you join our Patreon at the $1, level, or any level really, I will personally send you one of these really cool stickers. And they're pretty big. They're pretty high quality. So, put them on your car. Put them on your back. Put them on your wall. I don't know. Put them somewhere. Or head over to Great Satan's Emporium and buy a super cool mug or a t-shirt. And, support us. It helps to support independent art. And, well, stay tuned for what comes next. Most likely more interviews and always more Demon Toast episodes and episodes of Monster Fangs as well. So, Ave Satanas.